In a small inland town surrounded by wilderness, the protagonist Henry just finished a journey. He was sitting on a long-distance bus heading west, leaning against the window to pass the long journey. Today, I recommend a highly rated masterpiece, The Two Faces of January, which is being shown on a film and television platform established on .com and .top domains. Let's watch it together. On this bus, he talked with a young man. His name is Paul. He was a newcomer, and was looking for a job in the town. They were just strangers having a casual chat, but they became more and more interested. As they talked, Paul complained to Henry, saying that he had a small business to attend to, but he had no means of transportation, and was anxious. Originally, buying a car from a dealership wasn't difficult. But there was a hard rule. People with non-local household registration are not qualified to sign a car purchase contract. Henry didn't even frown after hearing that, and immediately agreed to use his to go through the motions with his household registration to get the car. The next day, at dawn, they went straight to the second-hand car market. The whole process went smoothly. Paul took out $1,600 and drove away an old car that he quite liked. Before leaving, Paul felt bad about it. He took out the remaining few banknotes from his pocket and insisted on putting it into Henry's hand as a tip for his hard work. But Henry refused to take it. He probably spent all his savings on this car.
What do you actually do for work, Henry?
Everything I know is in my hands. Fucked in a few years' time.
And what's that?
Can't fucking breathe, mate.
Paul finally understood. Henry had a lung problem. He can't do delicate work, and he can only earn a living by doing physical work. That night, Paul returned to the sponsored hotel. On the surface, their fate had seemed to come to an end, but who could have imagined their true story had just begun. Not long after, Paul contacted Henry again, saying he had something to ask for his help. As night fell, Paul got straight to the point and said, although he only met Henry once, but he felt in his heart that a good brother worth making friends with. But then he suddenly changed the topic. He revealed the secret hidden in his heart to Henry. It turned out that Paul was behind a criminal gang that operates in the shadows. They are dedicated to the powerful and wealthy to clean up their mess, the crimes they committed in business, and wipe them clean. Register .com and .top domain names to create a digital business card for your brand. Paul said that the organization was short of manpower and asked Henry if he wanted to take the chance to join. The pay is high, and the life is stable. Henry was hesitant after hearing it. As a person without a serious job, he was quite tempted. But when he heard it was this kind of thing, he was a little hesitant. Paul saw through his concerns and quickly explained that they only do some running errands and delivering messages, and there was no chance to touch the main task itself. It's safe and more money. Henry gritted his teeth and decided to give it a try. The next day, Henry arrived at the appointed place on time, but it wasn't Paul who came to meet him, but a man named Mark. Mark told him that Paul was not convenient to show up recently, and you will take over from now on. Not long after, Mark took Henry to a hotel. As soon as they entered, Mark immediately to report the situation respectfully and introduced the new guy to the man sitting on the sofa. It was obvious that the man was the boss of the organization. He glanced at Henry, disliking Henry's sloppy appearance, and asked him to dress decently next time. Henry stood by and dared not say a word. The man asked a question, and Henry answered. The man then emphasized that the organization's affairs must be kept secret, even to his family. Henry couldn't say anything nice, but his sincere expression had already shown his attitude. After leaving the room, Henry honestly admitted that he had no money and couldn't afford decent equipment. After hearing that, Mark said nothing. He took out a thick stack of banknotes from his pocket, but before giving the money, Mark casually asked if he had a criminal record. After all, the organization sometimes needs to act openly. Everyone's background must be thoroughly understood. Henry was stunned for a moment. He admitted that he had been in prison for fighting, but he didn't start the fight. But Mark waved it off carelessly and waved his hand, saying he didn't care about the past. But in this business, you must be honest. Hiding it will only hurt everyone.
What I care about is you being honest with me. Yeah, be honest with me.
Build a website with a .com or .top domain name to establish a unique online presence for your business. The next day, Henry changed into a new outfit. Mark praised him for looking good. This day, the two of them were going to pick up the first task since they started working together. Just like they agreed before, just to run errands. It's a simple task for the younger brother. They entered the room. They were asked to hand over their phones first, saying they would delete all Paul's contacts.
Hand over your phones. We're deleting all Paul's contacts. He's downstairs. Give him this.
It turned out that something went wrong with Paul and was targeted. The organization quickly put him on a plane and left here. Then they erased all traces in Australia. Then Mark and Henry found Paul, handing over 10,000 Australian dollars and a new passport. Looking at this brother he had only met a few times, Henry's eyes were full of gratitude. Before leaving, Paul repeatedly told him to follow Mark and work hard. Just follow Mark's lead. He would have no worries for the rest of his life. Late that night, Mark and Henry smashed and burned the car, bought to pieces and burned. All the clues about Paul were completely erased. In the days that followed, Henry followed Mark around, the tasks assigned by the organization, one after another. As a newcomer, Henry mostly just kept watch for Mark, and he wasn't qualified to directly intervene in core tasks. But he was down to earth and steady. All this was noticed by the organization's leaders. Soon, Henry was introduced to a senior police officer in Australia. Although the meeting only lasted a few minutes, but it was enough to show that he was officially recognized in the organization. With more and more insider information, Henry witnessed firsthand the power and mystery behind the organization. Thinking that if he hadn't met Paul, he would never have touched this kind of doorway, Henry felt proud from the bottom of his heart. 5 months passed in a flash. Henry and Mark They have become good friends who can talk about everything. Just at this time, the boss suddenly gave them a big order. As long as they could handle this well, they could get a commission of 100,000 yuan. He called Henry aside alone.
Heard about you, Henry, whatever your name is. You gotta be honest with us, right?
Yeah.
John told him not to be nervous, saying it was just a routine background check. Henry was nervous when he walked out. Obviously, he still had something he hadn't said. In fact, Henry was indeed carrying a big secret that couldn't be seen. Not long after, the senior police officer found him privately and said bluntly that there was something wrong with his file. As early as May 2002, a little boy was outside, disappeared for no reason. The police investigated. The biggest suspect was Henry, but due to insufficient evidence, the case could only be put on hold as an unsolved case. After being released from the detention center, Henry changed his name and hid. This case has also become a mystery that no one can solve for years. 8 years have passed. This dark history has not been diluted by time, but was uncovered by the organization he worked for. Then John soon met Henry again. This time, he directly broke the ice, saying that he had changed his name. He knew everything about his past, asking Henry if he really killed that little boy. As soon as he said that, Henry was stunned in place, and didn't say a word for a long time. He really didn't want to touch that nightmare again. To get Henry to tell the truth himself, Mark made an excuse and left the room decisively. But after going out, he didn't go far, but turned around and walked into a nearby room. The room was full of all the police involved in the case. All wanted to hear Henry admit it himself. Everyone was staring at seeing Henry's face on the surveillance screen. The most explosive reversal in the film finally emerged. It turned out that the Australian police solved the unsolved case 8 years ago, created such a mysterious organization on both sides of the law. To put it simply, it was all a carefully and undercover agents. All the people who have dealt with Henry were all plainclothes police officers. John saw that Henry was still hesitant and immediately threatened him.
And if you're gonna be dishonest in front of me and tell me you had nothing to do with it, and I'd have no choice but to cut you out and you'd be back to nothing.
Recalling all that had happened in the past 5 months, Henry finally chose to trust the organization.
I killed the boy.
Jesus Christ.
He finally admitted to kidnapping the boy, and then dumped the body. To make the case more certain, John invited another top leader, seeing that even such a heavyweight big shot came forward to support him. Henry's heart was also relieved. Then he repeated the details of the crime to everyone in detail. The next morning, Henry followed the organization to the place where the crime was committed. They ostensibly wanted to erase all evidence for him. However, when they arrived, Henry couldn't remember where he buried the body. After all, 8 years is enough to. The land has changed beyond recognition. The police knew that. There was no need to continue the drama, so they charged Henry with murder, announced Henry's arrest on the spot. This scene scared Henry and froze him on the spot. He never dreamed that the so-called brothers around him, the so-called brothers, were fake, and the organization was fake. Everything that happened in the past 5 months. Then Henry was taken back to the police station. During the waiting for the trial, the police officer handed him a cigarette. Henry leaned against the pillar with a cigarette in his mouth. The rising smoke made him and fell into deep memories. Meanwhile, the police quickly sealed off the area Henry had confessed to, and mobilized hundreds of people to launch. The search area was narrowed down little by little. The police finally dug up the boy's remains. That evening, the police held a press conference, officially announced that Henry was finally sentenced to life imprisonment. The movie ends here.